So I'd like to tell you a little bit now about a program that I have been working on. So I'm a law professor at Villanova University, which is it's outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I'm privileged because I teach a clinical course in which my students and I provide direct representation for free to asylum seekers who are seeking asylum in the United States. And I've been teaching this clinic for 25 years. I love my job, and I'm so proud of what my students and I are able to accomplish. But one of the problems is that, so these are my students and I. So one of the problems, though, is that there's simply not enough low-cost legal representatives in the country to provide representation to all the immigrants who need our services. And in fact, yesterday, I was at a conference for the Center for Migration Studies in Washington, D.C., where it was a room full of lawyers talking about this particular issue, about access to justice for immigrants. And this supply-demand imbalance hits me every time I walk into immigration court. The room is jammed, wall to wall with immigrants. Sometimes women have infants in their arms. There are toddlers wiggling in the aisles. And oftentimes, there's only a handful of lawyers in the room. Immigrants with representation, as you can imagine, fare much better in immigration court than those who don't. The statistics are actually startling. People who have a lawyer are 12 times more likely to gain access to relief in immigration court in the United States than those who don't. And so you can imagine how challenging it is for people to go into court without a lawyer, right? The laws themselves are very complex. But on top of that, there are cultural barriers, there are language barriers. For my clients, many of them are traumatized, they're refugees, and so they are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or other things that make it really hard for them to be able to talk about the persecution that they suffered. And yet the immigration court system requires them to talk about it in really detailed ways that sometimes it takes me months of talking to a client to get them to a place where they feel comfortable talking about the persecution and trauma that they suffered. So, as you might know, in the United States, unlike criminal defendants, immigrants are not entitled to free legal representation. And so they face this system which is stacked up against them without a lawyer. As I said, those with a representative, their chance of gaining relief from deportation is 12 times higher than those who don't have a representative. And we all know the costs associated with mistakes in the immigration system, right? We know about family separation. We know about the fact that, some of the people who we're representing have US citizen children, and when the parents get deported, we're separating families, we're putting a lot of stress on families. And so as an immigration lawyer, this supply-demand imbalance makes me angry and ashamed. I'm angry and ashamed that I'm part of a system that's built for failure. A system that's really primarily designed like an assembly line, where it's a shoddy assembly line at that, where we're trying to just kind of push people through the system, get them out the door, send them back home. I went to law school because I believe in our country's ideals of due process and access to justice. Yet we designed a system that allows 6 out of every 10 immigrants to go to immigration court without a legal representative. The statistic is even higher if the immigrant is in detention. And this applies equally to adults and children. So it means that less than 40% of the people who are appearing in immigration court have a real understanding of their rights under the immigration laws. So what a lawyer can do is say, stop, slow down, let's look at this particular case, take it off the assembly line, and figure out how to handle this particular person's situation. And judges will do it if there's a lawyer there to say stop, or an advocate to say stop. So this problem of access to justice has been troubling me for years. And I'm trying to figure out a solution. And I know that the demand side of the equation is not going to change. In fact, research shows that there are at least 1 million undocumented immigrants in the United States today that would have access to relief from deportation if they had someone, an advocate, who could help them present their claim. That was an article published by the Center for Migration Studies. So where I see an opening is on the supply side. Many volunteers are passionate about helping immigrants. There's a lot of pent-up demand, a pent-up energy that wants to be directed at helping immigrants, but people either don't know what to do or they don't have the skill set to do what's needed. There are so many recent undergrads, people who have just graduated from college, who want to have an immediate impact. They want to be able to do something, but they don't know what to do. So that's where I come in. I've been teaching immigration law to law students for 25 years. Now I'm shifting to a new audience. So did you know that there are regulations on the books today, and they've been there for decades, in the United States that allow for non-lawyer accredited representatives to provide legal representation to immigrants, both in immigration court and before the Department of Homeland Security. And these regulations have been on the books for decades, but up until today, there's less than 2,000 accredited representatives in the United States. So my goal is to ramp up that number, to ramp it up by a lot. I'd love to graduate 10,000 students who could then become immigrant advocates and go out in the community and represent immigrants. So that's what I'm doing at Villanova. I'm basically with the support of my university, and I got a grant from the MacArthur Foundation that helped me to be able to start thinking about how to design this program. I'm designing the first ever university-based certificate program that will train non-lawyers to become immigrant advocates. And then they would be able to apply to the Department of Justice after they graduate from the program and work in a non-governmental organization helping immigrants. And it's been really, really fun to design the program because I've been designing it backward. So as I said, I got a grant from the MacArthur Foundation, and that allowed me to organize some shareholder meetings. So I pulled together non-governmental organizations, people who are accredited reps, potential employers of the graduates, judges, immigration judges from the immigration court, immigration lawyers, and we had a few days of just brainstorming about what the curriculum needed to look like. And we're designing the curriculum backward. So we're starting with the competencies that we want our students to have when they graduate. We know what they need to be able to do because we do that work, right? That's the work I do. And so I'm starting with those competencies and then designing the curriculum backward to ensure that our graduates have the competencies that they need when they graduate. And I'm starting to develop the curriculum now with a group of colleagues from across my campus. Immigration, as we all know, is an interdisciplinary subject, and you can't just look at it from the perspective of the law. So I'm working with people from theology, from cultural studies, from history, public administration, and we're creating an interdisciplinary online program that will train accredited representatives. Every time I present it, there are people who come up to me and say, I want to sign up. So it kind of suggests that there is so much pent-up energy. There's a lot of interest in trying to figure out what we can do, and there's so much need. So creating this program is really designed to kind of fill that gap, to address the supply-demand imbalance. The goal is to launch it in fall 2020. Before then, I'm going to be doing a pilot so that I can beta test the curriculum with a handful of students. But really, because it's online, I hope that I can scale it, addressing the issues that we talked about, because Villanova is an Augustinian community. And Augustinians feel really strongly about studying in community and the need of being in a community with other learners. So I'm going to figure out how to do it. I've been working with a lot of experts in higher education, people who have done online learning and who have figured out competency-based online learning, and they're willing to volunteer and work with me to help to make this possible. And then I hope to bring the lessons that I learn and write about it and share it with the broader community. But I'm really excited about it. I don't have very much time to talk because I know I'm kind of sneaking into Kevin's time now. But I thought I'd give you a short overview and then I would answer some questions.
Tina Thackamies from Jesuit Worldwide Learning. What, you might have said it and I might have missed it, but what are the credentials for somebody to be able to do the online program?
No, I didn't say it, so thank you for asking. So I've been really, okay, so this is very innovative, and I'm pushing back on a lot of traditional norms at a university. And one of the things that I'm pushing back on is making people, one, provide a transcript. Because my understanding from experts in higher education is that one of the biggest hurdles for adult learners is needing to provide a transcript. Because they don't have an official transcript from, they graduated decades ago. And I want retirees, like there's so many retirees and people who want to take the program who might be discouraged from that, so I'm not requiring any transcript. The other thing is I don't want to require people to have even an undergraduate degree, because I want to make it accessible to immigrants who are in the community and want to help people in their community. So I'm getting some pushback on a lot of things, but those I've been able to convince them so far that I'm not going to require a transcript and I'm not going to require a college degree. But I think that most of the people who take the program will probably be college graduates, because they're taking it out of university and just going to a university and applying for a program will probably be scary enough for some people. I'm going to get to you because you didn't get to ask your question last time.
The same question, the same answer.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the fact that you're trying to push back on the transcript and the credentials is fabulous. And I might encourage you, and this is what I was going to say before, I don't know if anybody's working on micro-credentials and stackable credentials that you can do outside, which is so important important in this context. I mean, you're talking about lawyers, and for us, you know, the UN predicts we'll need 69 million new teachers by 2030. We're not going to get them through 4 year the same way we're not going to get these volunteer arbitrationists, whatever you want to call them. And so this might be a real solution and more amenable to adults who want to come back and help. So congratulations, brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. So I actually designed it so that it's 3 different certificates. So I haven't designed the whole curriculum yet, so I'm not sure exactly how long it will be, but the way we're thinking about it would be 1 year, part-time, and people could do all 3 certificates. But it is possible that you would take 1 certificate and then go out and work in the community and come back and take the 2nd and the 3rd, or not even. You know, so the first part of the curriculum is really designed for people who don't already work with immigrants, but who aren't trained to work with immigrants, but might work with immigrants. So it's about like understanding how to interview an immigrant, how to work with an interpreter. We have a whole component about self-care, because we find that, of course, working with people who are traumatized is actually traumatizing to ourselves. So we have a program about how to take care of ourselves as advocates. And so it is like that idea of the kind of stackable. In this case, it's one on top of the other. So we'll have to figure out how to make it so that but it will be a certificate granted by Villanova and branded by Villanova. So that will have currency in the marketplace.
Tony Sinera, being the Blessing Foundation, but there may be an opportunity to see another model that could be useful to you. Well, they've stepped out. There are 2 women who arrived this morning that are in a certificate program in spiritual direction from the Center of Ignatian Spirituality at Fairfield University. It's a rigorous 2-year program. At the end of it, they get a certificate as have gone through this 2-year non-degree, non-credit program. That kind of thing could be a model for them. So I'll make good.
I've worked before with Father Rich Riskavich.
Oh, great. And
Yes.
Father Jerry Blaschek is the director of the program. Tess is one of the students, so
I'd love to hear
recommend
about
that. I happen to be on the board of the Center for Ignatian Spirituality. There are clear parallels of what they're attempting to do to raise up the number of qualified spiritual directors without it being an academic degree program.
Yeah.
But it's a very rigorous program, so there may be some learning there.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been hearing a lot from women in congregations that have women religious who want to take this program.
Thanks very much. I'm Bridget Weiss from the Center for Human Rights at Boston College. First of all, congratulations. I've been aware of these problems for decades, and this solution is brilliant. So my question is, I didn't know about this access for non-lawyers. Is there pushback from the legal community about this, or why has it taken this long for someone to push in this direction? And then secondly, what costs do you envision for the person who wants to do this?
All right, so I'll take on the second one first, because it's another example of pushback. So I'm hoping to offer the whole thing for less than $5,000 at Villanova, which usually costs, I don't know, 60. So it's been a struggle, but so far, so good. Because I really want it to scale. And my argument is that because I'm doing it online, I can make it up in the scale. And it's just hard, I think, I've studied a lot about disruptive innovation, and it's just really hard for incumbent institutions to understand new models. So I'm working on that, but I'm hopeful that that will be the price point. So the other question about the Lawyers Association, it's great that the Lawyers Association, so the American Immigration Lawyers Association, AILA, is the Association for All Immigration Lawyers. And I've had conversations with the head of AILA, and he's highly supportive of this. I presented it as a way of helping immigration lawyers, because there are so many pain points in the work of immigration lawyers, things that they do but they don't need to do. If they had a physician's assistant who could help them the way we have in the medical community, then they would be much more efficient at doing their job. So I was just, the panel that I was on yesterday talking about this, the moderator was the head of AILA, of American Immigration Lawyers Association, and he talked about needing to think about the immigration legal services ecosystem, and this is the argument I've been making about this, that we really need in the legal services community to think about creating additional layers, just like we have in the medical community. So why don't we have something like a physician's assistant? And this is someone who's not a paralegal, because paralegals don't have authority to represent people in court. But in this particular program, people who graduated, and if they were working at a recognized organization, so any like clinic or a Catholic Legal Services type organization, they would be able to go into court and represent someone. They would be able to, on their own, submit an application on behalf of a refugee or an immigrant. There's a question over here. Oh.
Hi, René Michele of Gregorian University. My particular question is, how do the Jeff Sessions innovations impact, if they have any impact on this? The bigger question coming from Italy, we've had, well, I'm Maltese, but I'm following a little bit, and I teach theology, but I've followed a little bit the innovations in Italy. So Italy has moved towards a chamber determination process. In theory, there are videos which could be, so the faces of the people can be seen and their stories could be heard on video, but a lot of the courtrooms are not equipped, a lot of the lawyers and the judges are not doing that. So how could you have something which is robust in the face of all of the political movements trying to push back against this kind of initiatives?
Right. Great question. I actually did a Fulbright in Malta years ago at the University of Malta. So that's a lot of what we talked about yesterday in the Access to Justice Conference, the fact that right now, under this administration, asylum seekers aren't even given access to the asylum system if they're not entering at a port of entry. And so there's a lot of non-judicial ways that refugees and asylum seekers are being prevented from even accessing the justice system. And that's certainly a big problem. And it's a big problem that a lot of people are thinking about how to address. With respect to this particular certification, all the regulations with respect to accredited representatives are part of the regs, and so they could be changed. I haven't heard of any efforts to change them, but I'm really trying to keep this project under wraps. So it's possible that there might be pushback, against it. But there's it's a long, the thing about non-lawyers providing legal services is in the United States, it actually came out of the Administrative Procedures Act. So it's across all administrative agencies. And I do think, I don't know if others would agree, that if the administration were to change it for immigration, there would be a lot of pushback because Veterans Affairs, tax, there's a lot of Social Security, a lot of other agencies allow for these non-lawyers to provide legal representation. And it has been on the books for decades. But I'm not saying that they're not going to try, I just don't know whether it's on their agenda right now. Other questions?
Okay, this is the last one. Okay. I'm Kathleen Herbst from Every Campus a Refuge. I wanted to see how do you envision, or do you envision this project spreading to other universities, maintaining, I guess, the certification to teach this program?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about ways to do that, and one thing is that, you know, the program will be online, so it would be available across, you know, the curriculum would be available. And then maybe we could partner with other colleges and universities to have them do like a more blended model, so that they did the blended part locally, and then we did the other stuff online. I think there's a lot of possibilities. I haven't really gotten to that stage of kind of development and marketing, but that's something that is definitely on my radar. So if anyone's interested, let me know. All right, well, thank you, everyone, and Kevin is on board now.